You are shit. You are a heap of garbage. You have come to kill us. You have come to save us. I know there is already a lot of commentary about Trump and Epstein, and I'm entering this discussion to critique Christian nationalism. One would think that a religion that idolizes Trump would simply disappear, engage in a mass die-off like Jim Jones's People's Temple, where everyone drank their cyanide-laced Kool-Aid, the Jamestown Massacre. But that's not what's going on. The excess of immoral predator predation and wealth that is being uncovered in the latest 3.5 million page trove of FBI released documents seems to be reinforcing Trump's base, and even the Senate hearing with Attorney General Pam Bondi criticizing her handling of the victims is just another spectacle not likely to end the MAGA love fest. Now, the article I just published on my Substack, Will Christian Nationalism Finally Die by Its Own Sword?, concludes that the moral compass of this country has been broken since its inception. And I explain how that "you are shit" quote is pertinent to Christian nationalism. But first, let me be clear about my view on religion. I mean, for one, I'm part of a G20 interfaith working group, and I sometimes work at a theological college. And as a whole, I approach religion with love, respecting faith and spirituality. I see religion in its context, shaped by historical conditions, class, culture. And so from that view, Marx is useful, but often misquoted when people say religion is the opiate of the masses. In the critique of Hegel's philosophy of right, where this quote comes from, Marx does not simply dismiss religion. He writes, religion is a sigh of the oppressed creature, the heart of the heartless world, and the soul of the soulless conditions. It is the opium of the people. Then later, he writes, thus the critique of heaven is transformed into the critique of the earth, the critique of religion into the critique of law, the critique of theology into the critique of politics. And I would extend that theology sequence of politics into political economy, because that is where value, money, property, and accounting systems organize their power, which of course is his point. The issue is not personal faith. The issue is how moral language is used to manage religious legitimacy while dispossession and hegemony get reinforced. And so, if I had to name what is central to Christian nationalism, it is a program to seize class power. It is not a program to practice the ethics of the gospel. Its operating mechanism is to absolve, is absolution, which is precisely the moral mechanism used to practice the very worst excesses of free market capitalism, neoliberalism, and all the wealth accumulating privatization programs that we associate with the multi-millionaire, billionaire class. So the more morally comprised Trump appears, the more useful he becomes to the movement. His transgressions do not disqualify the religion. If anything, it amplifies more evidence of his persecution, which is seen in his proof of chosenness. So think about it. If Trump can be redeemed after misogyny, fraud, election tampering, and now his predator predation of young trafficked girls, then then his followers can assume that their own lesser acts of corruption can also be redeemed. And this in part explains why Epstein does not function as the kind of moral threshold in the Christian nationalist framework. He's just another spectacle that can be folded into tribal Trump loyalty. And this is the narrative that unfolds over and over again, where the logic of abuse and accumulation is coded into the discourse of violence made sacred. Now, across social media, I hear references to child sacrifice and cannibalism, which I hope are not true. But even if they are, those transgressions are treated not as ordinary behavior, but as ritualistic. And so think about this, that the history of this country, where capitalism wraps genocide, slavery, rape, theft, fraud, racism, and disposition into an unspoken taboo, it reflects this practice on a very regular basis, not necessarily as ritualistic. It's just a normal part of everyday capitalism as practiced from the beginning. The evolution of this country is predicated on that history. And for Christian nationalists, the absolution of Trump is wrapped around their own racist recognition of American wealth and salvation. And there is something deeply wrong with the moral and economic order that hands out absolution and impunity like Halloween candy. Now, obviously, we need to virtue shift our governments. We need to move away from impunity and move closer towards social responsibility, accountability, and human dignity. And I'm hoping that this is the turning point, because this whole Trump Epstein moment is the moment, it should be the moment when the international community finally realizes that the United States is not a moral country. It is not a country one can trust. We should know that. Trust is important. So remember, like, even when you go back and you look at like the dollar and you think about "in God we trust," right? So Eisenhower did that during his presidency. He printed "in God we trust" on the money because at that point the U.S. dollar became the international trade currency. And so if there is no trust in currency exchanges or international markets, then why should countries want to trade on your currency? Anyway, now with the decline of the American of the U.S. economy and the decline of empire, the point is that the global economy is shifting towards China because nations now trust China. They see it. It is clear. Socialism with Chinese characteristics is a useful reference point. It is a material model that treats religion as a social tradition shaped within its own national development. And so within this framework, traditions are adapted to goals such as social harmony, ethnic unity, stability, security. China is practical and economic. The world needs that kind of legitimacy that people can trust, as well as the material outcomes that people can actually live with. So anyway, if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to me, Decolonize Accounting, Substack here, Onibaba at Substack. Even though this didn't really address decolonial accounting systems, the article does dive deep. And if you enjoy it, you can even buy me a cup of coffee if you're feeling generous. I need it. Thank you.